And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome aboard. I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook. It is Sunday, June 2nd, and this outlook will be for Monday and Tuesday. We start, though, with the state of the sea ice on this Sunday afternoon. We still have some areas of pack ice out across the northern Bering Sea, and this ice has been drifting southward as a result of the prevailing northerly winds, and that'll be the case here as we go through Monday and Tuesday, with some of the strongest winds coming down through here along the eastern Bering and along the west side of the state during the day on Monday. Even though we are now into June, the ice will continue to slowly melt off, but again, what remaining pack ice is out there will be driven along by a batch of colder air that's going to drop down through the Chukchi Sea and Bering Strait and continue southward. Meanwhile, low pressure over the North Pacific is going to head up into the southeastern Gulf on Tuesday. This system has a central pressure down around 976 millibars, which is rather strong for this time of year. So that by the time we get into Monday afternoon, we have a cold front, the leading edge of the colder pool of air passing just south of St. Lawrence Island on its way southward. And then here in the North Pacific, this low will track northeastward come Tuesday, and that system will bring pretty good round of rain across the Panhandle, team up with a easterly wave over the lower Yukon, and then work its way westward across the southeast and south central mainland, especially along and south of the Alaska Range. Some pretty soaking rains developing for Wednesday into Wednesday night, and then the remnants of that will cross through the central interior later Wednesday night and Thursday. So looking at the marine forecast, variable winds around 5 knots here for the inner channels of the Panhandle, Lynn Canal, Stevens Passage, waves a foot or two. Southeast winds to 20 knots there down toward Ketchikan, Metlakatla, including Dixon Entrance, where waves could be 3-4 feet. The outer coast southeast winds 10 to 15 knots south of Gustavus to off of Craig, swells about 5-6 feet, and then more easterly winds 15 to 20 knots outside of Yakutat Bay with 6-foot swells. So Tuesday, as that system approaches, winds will be increasing along the outer areas of the Panhandle and down there toward Dixon Entrance up into Metlakatla and Ketchikan. We expect southeast winds increasing upwards of 25, even 35 knots, with some gusts to 40 knots possible off of Craig. And seas building 10 feet there, Dixon Entrance, 16 feet there off of Craig. As we go further north, look for easterly winds, then turning more northeasterly to northerly off of Gustavus and outside of Yakutat Bay at 15 to 20 knots with swells of 9 to 10 feet. Rain will also be overspreading the Panhandle there for Tuesday. Now along the northwestern Gulf, winds will be easterly within Prince William Sound, 10 knots on Monday with waves a foot or two. Easterly 20-knot winds outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance. Northeast winds 25 knots off the Kenai Peninsula and northeast of Kodiak Island, with north winds around 15 knots off of Anchor Point down through the entrance of Cook Inlet. And then for Tuesday, winds will be southwesterly around 10 knots within Prince William Sound, with waves running a couple of feet, and then south-southwest winds 15 knots up along Cook Inlet with waves 3 to 4 feet, and then westerly winds off of the Kenai coast and Kodiak Island at around 15 knots with 3-4 foot swells. Across Kodiak Island on Monday, we're expecting north winds to 25 knots within Shelikof Strait, northeast winds offshore there of Kodiak and Akiak. As we go down along the Alaska Peninsula, we start to run into those stiffer northwesterly winds out toward Cold Bay Faults Pass. We could see 25 to 30 knot winds as a result of that colder northwesterly flow coming down the west side of the state in the eastern Bering Sea. Come Tuesday, we expect westerly winds 15 to 20 knots around Kodiak Island, and then generally a fairly broad northwesterly flow across, especially the middle lower Alaska Peninsula at 25 to 30 knots, perhaps even upwards of 35 knots there near Faults Pass. Seas running 4 to 5 feet on the North Pacific side and as high as 7 to 11 feet there north of Cold Bay on the Bering side. For Monday, winds in the eastern Aleutians around Dutch Harbor, northwesterly 30 to 35 knots, then northwesterly 25 to 30 knots there westward all the way past Adak. And for Tuesday, Still 30 to 35 knot winds out of the northwest in the vicinity of the far eastern Aleutians around Alaska. As we go westward, northwest winds 20 to 25 knots. They turn more westerly west of Adak, and the highest swells will be up there along the Bering side of the eastern Aleutians, upwards of 10 and 11 feet. For Monday, across the southwest west coast, generally a dominant northerly flow, and we're going to see some winds to gale force there coming down through Etolan Strait and out over, once you get offshore there, of Kuskokwim Bay, 35 knot northerly gales. Otherwise, 30 knot gales extending all the way from the Pribilovs up through St. Matthew and off the lower Yukon coast. Swells could be as high as 10 to 12 feet, especially down toward the Pribilovs, with 25 knot north winds within the wider expanse there of Norton Sound. For Tuesday, winds come down a little bit. We're looking at northwesterly winds 20 to 25 knots, though still upwards of 30 knots there, just outside there of Kuskokwim Bay, and swells generally running 5 to 7 feet there where there is open water. But again, keep in mind, still some of the remaining pack ice that's left would be drifting southward. And then for the lower Chukchi Sea down through the Bering Strait, west side of the Seward Peninsula, north side of St. Lawrence, brisk northerly winds, 30 to 35 knot gales, again with ice drifting southward with that kind of flow. And waves could be as high as 6-7 feet in between those areas of ice. And then along the northwest Arctic coast into Utqiagvik, 20 to 25 knot north winds falling off to 5 to 15 knot northeasterly winds, Prudhoe Bay over toward Kaktovik. And for Tuesday, generally northerly winds, north-northwest winds 5 knots, Kaktovik through Prudhoe Bay. Picking up, though, as we drop down along the northwest Arctic coast as high as 35 knot northerly gales off of Cape Lisburne, and then coming down through the lower Chukchi Sea, Bering Strait to the north side of St. Lawrence Island and just off of Port Clarence and Whale. We expect a continuation of north winds right around 30 knots.